The following is a BATV production, made with the equipment that is available to residents of our cable viewing area. To learn more about television production and the equipment that is available to you, please visit www.mybatv.com.
Hello, and thank you for joining us at BATV's Balto Studios inside Batavia High School. My name is Gresey, editor of the Kane County Chronicle, and I will be your host and moderator for Viewpoint. Viewpoint is a roundtable talk show that will highlight a specific topic that is being discussed in our community. In today's show, we will discuss pressures teens face. Here to participate in this discussion are Erin Reid, assistant principal at Batavia High School, Minalga, executive director of Hearts of Hope, Perez, sheriff of Kane County, Rob Russell, coroner of Kane County, and Jennifer DuBose, the Tales from the Motherhood columnist in the Kane County Chronicle. Thank you for joining us today. Our first question, I'm going to direct at you. What are some of the common academic and social pressures that you see teens deal with, and how might these pressures change as students transition from summer to the school year?
I definitely think when you look at Batavia High School students as a culture and as a student body, with over 60% of our kids participating in extracurricular activities, they have so much on their plates. There's so much to balance. When you look at upperclassmen that are multiple sport athletes or in multiple clubs, and they have a job, and they have the academic pressure of doing well in school, plus the parental pressure of we want you to get into these 3 colleges. It weighs on them, I think, emotionally and sometimes even physically with our student body. And then the social pressures come with what we hear in the news every day. I mean, Batavia is not immune to the drugs and alcohol and just the mental pressures that all of these, balancing all these things come to our kids.
Any other pressures that you have all witnessed teens facing?
Just the pressures of everyday life and the fact that they are bombarded with information on a daily basis. With the advent of the internet, they were exposed to more probably by the age of 5 than we were at the age of 21.
Sure.
I was just going to suggest, too, that they're dealing with the same pressures we are. The details are different, but the trouble is their frontal lobes aren't quite as developed as ours might be. As a family therapist, this is something that we talk about a lot, with parents and kids, with parents more. But the fact is their frontal lobes aren't as developed, and that's where our judgment and reasoning are located in our brains. And so it's very hard. So they're dealing with the same stuff we are, but with fewer skills, perhaps, fewer resources.
Do you think that there is as much of a change as there was in the past, with summer being the break that it was many years ago, to today, when many kids are doing a lot of extracurricular activities and their parents are making sure that they are involved in things so that they don't have this downtime that might force them to get into trouble in some respects?
From an educator standpoint, I don't feel like children have a downtime at all anymore. They are never disconnected. It doesn't matter if they're on a family vacation, if they're on the football field or in marching band or in chess club, they have access to every source of information out there via their technology. They're always plugged in. So I don't feel that downtime, even in their own minds, ever really happens.
I would definitely agree with that. I have 4 kids of my own, and they have friends, obviously, and many of the parents over the summer, they continually try to find something for their kids to get involved with. It never seems like that they just allow them to be at home. And, and some schools of thought would say, well, idleness is not good, but other schools of thought are, they need a chance to kind of use their brain a little bit and kind of, build a dream for their life. I don't know if that's, causing this anxiety that many of the kids have today. I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely there.
I would agree, and I think we do place a lot of expectations on our children, and therefore they do become full of anxiety. They don't have time really to use their imaginations, and because of being forced to succeed and achieve, they sometimes tend to self-medicate.
Jennifer, kind of going off of that idea that there are a lot of kids involved in activities and that can lead to anxiety in some cases. You know, you write a lot in our newspaper about your kids and the active lives that they lead. How do you balance as a mom the extracurricular activities that your kids do on top of school and making sure that they're not overwhelmed to a level where it gets out of control?
I am a huge fan of downtime, and I have never been a parent who has encouraged my kids to play through the pain, or, you know, I hear coaches say that all the time, and I say, no, we won't be doing that. You know, we're 11 or we're 12, or it doesn't really matter. I'm 45, I'm not going to play through the pain. And it's something that I think is very important for us to teach our kids, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's academics or sports or the pressure to constantly have something to do, you know, on the weekend or whatever. When my kids say they're bored, I think it's fantastic, because it means that they aren't connected. They aren't absorbed in some goofy TV show or something. They're really, and that boredom is what leads to creativity and leads to discovering what matters to them. So I'm a big fan of downtime. But balancing it is really important. So when I hear them talk about being exhausted or hurting or just, I just try to pay attention. And I think it's really hard to pay attention if we all have so much going on, but it's something we have to model too. So
and you did note you are a family therapist. Is it hard to kind of separate what you've learned about how to make families function as well as they can away from sometimes just being a mom with your kids?
I feel so sorry for my kids, Kathy, because honestly, and my husband's a psychologist, so they're really, you know, they get a double whammy in our house. But, and I don't pretend that I'm going to divest myself of what I know and what I experience. And what's interesting is that sometimes I hear them talking to their friends, or when I read their cell phones once in a while. My 12-year-old only just got hers, and I'm very random about it, and they know that that's part of the deal. I see them articulating certain things, supportive things to their friends, which cracks me up. And I'm like, oh, wow. You know, you just
Good
never
job.
know. Yeah, but so no, I really can't take myself out of that. I sort of, for better and for worse. And frankly, I'm starting a therapy fund for them, so if anyone wants to contribute, it's hard.
Well, the discussion is off to a great start, but it's time for a quick break. We'll be right back.
Funway, it's your time in the fun.
Race your friends, bring your work group.
Bring the whole family.
See who's best of the best.
Battle it out in a cool way on a hot day with Water Wars.
Swing, batter, and hit one out of the park.
Drive them crazy and in circles with bumper boats.
And mini golf, indoors or outside, for kids of all ages.
So round them up and head on over to Funway.
Because it's always a fun day at Funway.
Hi, I'm Tom Wangler, President of Confident Air. Regular maintenance can prolong the life of your furnace and keep your energy costs to a minimum. Plus, there's less of a chance of a breakdown on a cold winter night. Your furnace needs proper care and attention to keep it running smoothly, so you don't end up paying too much for heating during the cold winter months, or worse yet, with deadly carbon monoxide poisoning. We recommend an annual inspection to ensure safe operation. Confident Air, your trusted home comfort professionals since 1992.
Welcome back to Viewpoint. Let's start with our next question. Sheriff Pat Perez, you were one of the members of a panel that the Kane County Chronicle hosted a few months back about bullying, and that is a big issue these days, and there are a lot of teens who feel pressures from bullying. Not only in-person bullying, but cyberbullying, as we talked about during that bullying panel. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you've noticed with bullying and what works when it comes to combating bullying?
Sure. It's, you know, people look at it as being a school issue or a child issue. It's a cultural issue. It's a culture that we've allowed to develop over the years that's been accepted. And, you know, it's come to, I guess, a fruition through the kids. And where I see mistakes have been made is not including the students in the solution, that you've got parents and teachers and administrators that are having it heaped upon them to make all the changes. But in reality, we've got this vast untapped resource of students that have to be engaged in the process in order for it to stop, because it is their peers and it is their level. And yes, the cyberbullying has taken it to a whole nother level, to the point where you know, we've seen teens commit suicide over cyberbullying. It cuts into them that deep. So, you know, hopefully through all of our efforts and these continued forums, we can open eyes of parents and open eyes of the schools that, you know, let's include the students and help them protect and help themselves.
And I can say from a school standpoint, 3 years ago when I became an assistant principal and went into student services, I would say that 90% of the discipline that we had during that first year was Facebook harassment, bullying, that moved to Forum Spring, that moved to Twitter, and it's just followed with all the new social media. So we have ebbed and flowed with what has worked and what hasn't worked as far as getting that behavior to stop among students. But I think what was shocking to me was when we decided absolutely students and their parents need to be part of this solution. One of the first things we would say from an administrative standpoint to a parent when they called to say this is happening to my child on Facebook, okay, you need to tell your student to delete that account on Facebook. And I have yet to find a parent that was okay with doing that.
Really?
Well, that's one thing I was going to ask, because it might seem, especially from an older generation standpoint, that you could just tune out and not go on social media and not have a Facebook page. But is that a reality in today's world for young people to be able to be social but not have those connections?
I don't know the answer to that question, other than I know if as a parent I can't imagine my child not having a Facebook page or saying, I understand that this these horrible things are being said about you and it's causing you to feel like this and you don't want to go to school, but I don't want to make you get rid of that because I know it's important. I don't know. I feel like that's a mixed message. And it's hard to support something that's culturally embedded in who we are.
Embedded is the word.
And Facebook itself and these social medias are not in themselves a bad thing. I do a lot of great things with my office with Facebook. We get a lot of information that's out there. I just, speaking as a parent, we told our kids if they got some form of social media that we are to have all the passwords, and we will be watching it. So you don't have carte blanche to say what you want to say, that you will be held accountable to the things that you say. So I think, again, I'm speaking as a parent, not necessarily as the coroner. On the other side, speaking as the coroner, it definitely, the CDC has done a recent study, and they found that 1 in 12 students have attempted suicide, and 1 in 6 have thought about it. I mean, those are alarming numbers. There's definitely some causes to this, and I think the more study that we do on this, I think it's valid, and anything that we can do needs to be done.
And I think that talking about this is a great way to get parents involved and engaged and educated, because that's where it starts. It starts at home. And as a community, we've been very reactive to tragedies like suicide, which has opened our eyes to be more proactive on other levels. But even with things like Yellow Ribbon Week, where we do all school assemblies, and we'll have Rachel's Challenge coming in September for the community and for the middle school and the high school, there is positive feedback from the community and parents, but there's also a lot of nervousness. Parents, these are very sensitive topics, and so when we bring them up in a school setting and the parents aren't equipped or educated with how to handle that at home, it becomes a source of contention between the school and the community. And I think that educating everybody, parents, community members, and students alike is the key to being able to move forward with these topics.
And I know as a parent, when my wife and I sent our sons off to school, we didn't expect the school district or the teachers to teach our children about the perils of drug use, about sex education. Those are things that as a parent, it's your responsibility to teach your children. That we sent our children to school to learn academically. And the social things that they needed to learn and the rights and the wrongs have to come from home. And if they don't, it's very unfair to put that burden on the schools.
It is, and children truly do look up to their parents, and parents have great influence over their children, even more so than the internet and more so than the media or peers even. Even though sometimes we think they're not listening to us, they are, and they look to us for guidance. So we better know what we're doing with our kids and what they're into, joining their world and getting to know what's going on in their life.
I would absolutely agree with you, Erin, because, I mean, if you think about the fact that each of us still probably wonders what others think of us or what our parents or siblings think of us, no matter how old we are, that doesn't really change. We might have the skills and the experience, you know, the resilience to deal with what they might think, but kids really do pay attention. I absolutely agree with you. It's very, very interesting. Just the other day, one of my children and I were talking, and the reaction, "Oh, I thought you didn't think that was a good idea." I was like, "Oh no, it's a great idea." But it was so, I was surprised that it meant that much at that moment, and it really reminded me once again just how much that matters. They're really paying attention, and I think parents often underestimate the value of their feedback.
And Leah and I have had a lot of firsthand experience trying to get parents engaged that unless with bullying, with the forums that I've done with you and with others, it tends to be the parents of children who have been bullied. If it's a drug abuse forum, it's parents of children who have suffered through drug addiction. And it's trying to break through and get to those other sectors. And I believe there's just this, and Lee and I have had many discussions about it, that people have this, they feel there's a stigma that if I go to a seminar about drug abuse, that my friends are going to look at me and think, oh, their child must be a drug addict or they must be a bad parent. No, you're going to educate yourself and arm yourself with the tools to, you know, combat drug use or combat bullying.
And in the same vein of that comes depression and mental health issues. Parents don't want their neighbors, their friends in the community to see them in these same areas because there's such a stigma, a negative stigma placed on mental illness. Yet we know cancer is a disease that needs to be treated with medication, but I don't know that as a society, we're there with mental health yet.
Right.
And
it would seem like it's gotten better from decades and decades ago, but it doesn't seem like it's gone, especially when you see some of the horror stories that wind up in the news where there is somebody who has a mental illness and then winds up doing something that's very extreme, but it's too late for that to have been stopped.
Right.
Well, to give you a statistic, 25 to 30% of all jail and prison populations in the United States are people with mental illness. They are people that need treatment. And the crimes they commit are as a result of their mental illness. It's not because they have a criminal intent. And I know I see it firsthand in our jail that, you know, when we have people that are suffering from mental illness, that there's a structured regimen of medication and treatment and counseling. There aren't the issues. It's when they're released from our custody and there's no one there to guarantee that that's going to be followed.
Right.
I'm actually surprised it's that low.
That structure.
25 to 30.
Some places it's higher.
Okay.
And then we've got the other percentage of like 86 that are suffering from drug and alcohol abuse in jails.
Exactly.
Right.
And Leah, of course, that is another big issue that teens deal with. the pressure of college might be one thing, but the pressure when some of your friends might be getting into drugs and alcohol, of course, can really start to weigh heavy on a teen, and it becomes a more serious issue than what college you're going to get to, although that is a very serious issue. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that and helping parents help their children become empowered not to do drugs and alcohol?
Well, first the parents have to learn about the drugs and alcohol and how available they are and how cheap they are, how powerful they are. And they have to open up the dialogue with their children. I think what tends to happen with parents is they might have a nice talk once or twice, don't do drugs, they're bad for you, and think they're done.
Right.
It's ongoing. It should be early, when they're young, when they're 4, start talking about healthy choices. Age appropriately, start sharing with them about the perils of drugs and alcohol. Because again, as we were discussing, kids are listening to us. They are looking up to us for the answers. And so we do this when they are offered drugs. And it's not if they're offered drugs, but when they are offered drugs, they'll have a response. They can, we teach parents to role play with their children, to practice refusal skills at home. Kids love doing that. It's a lot of fun, and they get their creative juices flowing too, and they can practice in advance and know how to get out of a predicament. My own son was addicted to drugs, and when he shared with me what happened, he was 16, a friend offered him drugs, and his heart kind of fluttered a little bit, but he didn't have a response, and he took it. And that decision changed all of our lives for many years.
Of course. And from a school standpoint, when we talk about drugs and alcohol and social issues and pressures like that, I've had multiple conversations with our superintendent, Dr. Hitchens, who actually lives in Naperville, and her students go to Naperville, where we've seen in the media and everywhere else such a horrible heroin problem where students have died and overdosed. So we've been talking about that with our high school principal as well, and the three of us having this conversation as mothers and as educators. We want to be on the front end, the proactive end of that, that tragic issue. So we've coupled with Breaking Free, which is a community agency that partners with us, and some of the parents and the students of kids in Naperville that have lost people to come do a community night and an education night for parents and students about the effects of drugs. And like you said, it changed all of your lives, not just your son's.
Right.
No, right.
The ripple effect goes forever.
And so many parents believe this can't happen to them. And they'll, I think those are the deadliest words a parent can say, not my child.
I absolutely agree.
Because all children, because of, as you were discussing earlier, with that teen brain, they are prone to making poor choices from time to time because they don't have the reasoning skills up here in the front part. So we have to be their executive center as parents. And it is up to us.
And Sheriff,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sheriff Perez and Rob, you've certainly seen probably some of the worst of it. It doesn't have to be far away from here. It's happening in Kane County. People are losing their lives doing drugs here in Kane County. And you brought up talking to your kids as young as age 4. Sheriff Perez, how young have you seen people getting into a drug lifestyle?
We've seen kids starting at the age of 10, 12 years old, which is not uncommon, and some people may scoff at that, but it's reality. It's the truth. And they start at that age. There's a full-on addiction by the age of 15 or 16, which takes years and years to break. And this is something that I learned in my relationship with doing seminars with Leah, is about the teen brain not reaching maturity until the age of 25. And the longer a person can go without using drugs or alcohol closer to that age of 25, the less chance of them having an addiction as they reach the age of 25.
Right. Yeah. And Rob, like we were saying, you've seen the worst of it. Can you talk a little bit about what problem we do have here in Kane County with young people getting into trouble when it comes to drugs and alcohol, and what kind of tips can you offer parents so that they can help their children?
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned that, you know, this doesn't happen here, or that thought process. I can assure you it happens here in Kane County. We talked about Naperville. I was talking to a medical doctor a few weeks ago, and we were talking about anxiety, which is, I think, a good reason why a lot of people get on drugs. The #1 area in the state where anti-anxiety medication is prescribed is in the Naperville area. I think there is a correlation to that. And again, I'd mentioned earlier about the CDC, you know, 1 in 12 have attempted suicide and 1 in 6 have thoughts. And I would probably say that those numbers are same as Kane County. I have no reason to believe that they're not. It is very sad for me to go on a scene, and I've been on those scenes where a young person has taken his or her life, and you know, at that point, the best that I can do is try to comfort the family and give them the appropriate level of service that they need, and try to help with their recovery efforts, because it's a very devastating time in their life. So I don't know exactly how prevalent it is, but you know exactly. But I can tell you, I do believe that the CDC numbers are reflected well. And you know, tips that I have is just parents, you know, you need to really stay involved, you know, with your kids' lives. #1. #2, it's not all the parents' faults. Kids, I'm speaking to them too. You know, if they have an issue, or they have problems, or they have, if they're being bullied, they need to tell. They need to step up and talk to somebody about it. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents about it, I feel bad for you. I really wish you had that relationship. But if for some reason, if you don't have that relationship, then talk to the school, talk to a counselor, talk to whomever will listen to you. Because I can tell you, students, that not dealing with the problem will not make it go away.
Absolutely.
And keep talking until someone listens. And, you know, for parents, I really feel strongly that they assume drugs and alcohol are going to be an issue. They're certainly going to be offered, but we shouldn't assume that our kids are going to experiment unless we sort of unwittingly give them permission to, by saying, well, I know you're going to try it. Or you make very clear what your expectations are. I don't expect you to use drugs and alcohol. I do expect you will be offered them. Here are some concrete ways we can, you know, handle that. Brainstorming scenarios. What would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? You know, really be very concrete.
And as an educator and from a school standpoint, we wouldn't be having this conversation if everyone were parented like those of you sitting around this table. However, we have a lot of, in this day and age, we have broken families. We have families whose both parents or single parent homes work and don't see their kids because they work at night, so on and so forth. So when Pat, you said earlier, it shouldn't just be the school's issue, it should start at home. The sad part for me is seeing so many kids where they're not getting that support at home.
Right.
So then it is the burden, and I think the job of the schools and all the support professionals within a building to give these kids as much education, as much support as we can to combat what they're not getting at home.
And even more sad is, you know, the observation that we have in law enforcement, but all of us see it with parents who try to be their children's friend, and they have, you know, the Saturday night parties where, okay, well, we'll provide the booze, you leave your keys here, I'm keeping your keys, I'm not allowing you to go anywhere. The messages that are being sent there are so skewed.
We have conversations a lot in different pockets of professionals in education about the lack of consequences we feel our kids today receive from home. The amount of phone calls we can get in a week where a parent justifies a child's bad behavior or wrong choice is much greater than the amount of times a parent will support a consequence the school's given.
You know why I think that's happening, Erin? I really think that's happening because parents would have to face their own issues around their own behaviors and their own maybe a little bit of shame about their sense of inadequacy, that they don't really know what to do or what to say. And I think that's part of the struggle for parents. So I really feel for parents. You know, I'm very lucky that I have a few degrees in, you know, so I feel comfortable wrestling these things and talking about these subjects. But this is not stuff that most parents. It's
still a hard job for you.
It is so hard. I mean, I am often a deer in the headlights. Like, did he really say that to me? Yes, it's very hard, and that's exactly I'm glad you said that, because if it's that hard for me, I have tremendous empathy for everyone.
And that's what we have to have, is empathy for parents.
Absolutely.
And come alongside them and educate them as best we can. Here's the issue: how do we get them there to educate them? Where do we go?
And we talk about that all the time. So I can say, okay, the school's hosting this community night on this given night. If people don't come, it's not good enough for us as a school to say, well, we tried. No, how are we going to reach the parents and the students that we need to target to help them not be put in these negative situations? And it's about finding those creative ways. If it's coming to you know, neighborhoods and bringing student volunteers to babysit for the younger siblings that parents might have to watch, or if it's dinner time, providing dinner for them, all these different creative ways we have to figure out how to engage everyone, because this is a community, societal issue, not...
It's a system issue, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to take another quick break. We'll be back with more Viewpoint.
Are you looking for quality, integrity, and value in a remodeler? Then look no further than Batavia's own Green Star Remodeling. Green Star Remodeling is Batavia's hometown remodeler. We're a full-service exterior remodeling company that does everything from roofing and siding to windows, doors, and more. Green Star Remodeling delivers quality and value at an affordable price. Our customers are #1 and every customer is satisfied. If it's your dream, we'll make it happen. Visit greenstarremodeling.com or call 630-406-8826.
Check out the #1 new local show in Batavia. With local favorites, Jeff Matter, Man of Action, and Joy Cotero. Am I saying that right? Join them as they take you to local shops, restaurants, and all the fun activities to do. Get the inside scoop on what happens from the other end. Anything goes with this show. So join us as we take you out on the town, only on BATV.
Welcome back to Viewpoint. We were talking a little bit about how important parents and family role plays in enabling teens to be able to make the right decisions in young people. Can we talk a little bit more about that? And Sheriff Perez, how important do you think one's peer group is on a friend level when it comes to enabling a teen to make good decisions?
It's highly important, because that's who they connect with, that's who they're trying to impress, they're trying to become friends with. And I think it's really important for all of us to really teach the or for us to have influence on our children, and for them to have it on each other, about consequences of decision making. That a well thought out decision, take the time to think it through. Is this right or is it wrong? Do you know in your heart this is a bad decision? Then don't do it. And if you do make that bad decision, understand the consequences could be very, very severe and could haunt you the rest of your life. We no longer teach the DARE program at the Sheriff's Office. We teach a program called Too Good for Drugs. And it's really not rooted in drug abuse per se. It's more rooted in decision making and how to make good decisions, and what you talked about, coming up with a game plan of if someone approaches you to use drugs or to use alcohol or to smoke cigarettes, to have a response to combat that so that you don't fall prey to it. And you know, to understand, and we also have the parents have to engage in this program with the students. There's homework that goes home with them.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, and they have to complete homework assignments with them. And what we've seen is just a tremendous attendance when we do their graduation ceremony, that the engagement between the parents and the schools have been fantastic about supporting the program.
The three most important things I think we as a community need to teach all of our kids would be, you touch base on two of them, is decision making, problem solving, and critical thinking. Employers will come into the high school to speak to groups of students and say on a yearly basis, in the work world, the most important thing our graduates are lacking are the soft skills, which, you know, can be something as simple as making eye contact and shaking someone's hand when you meet them, to these problem-solving, decision-making skills that they're not coming into these careers with, because as adults, we have made so many of their decisions for them. We fear that our kids will fail, and if they fail, they'll become depressed or they'll become anxious, and we don't want that to happen, so we shelter them in a way sometimes that actually harms them in the long run for being productive adults.
I agree with you, Erin, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think parents are afraid to, I have two thoughts. One, I think parents are afraid to allow their kids to watch them making decisions and wrestling with some of the possibilities and what might the consequences be. And gosh, what happens if something goes wrong? How do we handle this? Parents are so afraid to share all that stuff. Now, there need to be boundaries. There need to be some limits. But kids need to imitate, and they need to learn. And this is very helpful. The other thing is that I think parents really need to be aware that it's okay for crummy stuff to happen, especially when they're at home, and we can support them. It's not like we want to go looking for trouble, but when trouble happens, because it will, not to panic and use it as an opportunity. It's cliche now, but one of my very favorite cliches is the the Chinese characters. The Chinese character for the word crisis, you may be familiar with this. It's comprised of two symbols. One symbol represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Have you guys heard this before?
I have not.
Oh, good, a new cliche. And it's wonderful, because it is scary to have a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. And we have to look at these things, every situation, as an opportunity to teach. And that's why we're there. That's why we're parents. That's why they're still in the nest, as hard as it is for them.
That's a good point. You know, I've heard it said that principals are caught, they're not taught. And that's why I keep, you know, mentioning parents that they're to do their job. And Pat had mentioned that, you know, sometimes we get sidelined parents and whatnot. But, and again, as I mentioned, it's also, you know, the parents cannot be the kid's friend. I mean, you have to be you're the one that they're looking to. You know, one of the things that I thought about while listening to you all was, I don't remember a whole lot about my sociological degree that I got from Northern, but I do remember this. I remember a concept called differential association. It just basically says that criminals hang around criminals. So, you know, I believe that. I truly believe that. I think there's plenty of examples of that. And to answer the question, I really believe that kids need to be careful with who they hang out with. You know, it is a very important concept that they need to do.
So I'm going to pose a question. I'm going to be devil's advocate here from a high school student standpoint, because I agree with everything we're talking about. But what happens when You know, we have the cliques and the groups in high schools that are inevitable. We would all like to say, no, we're all kind to one another and we're open to have anyone sit at our lunch table, and that is just not the case.
Right.
So the new kid comes in, the freshman comes in, and that girl or boy is not the person who's going to be on the football team and doesn't want to join cross country or be in a play or join a club or activity. So then what? Because we know their peer group can make or break them in some instances. So how do we get that kid to fit into a positive peer group when maybe the only thing that they know to do on the weekend is go hang out in areas where we know there's trouble? It's difficult to have these conversations with kids and parents all the time. I don't have the answer, but it's...
Well, I think first we have to have that strong family bond to begin with that solidifies that that the child has a place, a soft place to fall, a place where he looks up to his parents as his heroes, and then if they're in those kinds of groups at school, I really don't know what else you can do except from a school standpoint. I'm kind of baffled.
Because we're still talking about a nuclear family, I feel like, and we're not talking about the kids I'm talking about. We're talking about the kids that are on their own at home, that don't have a support system. Then what?
I was a page when I was in high school, and part of what my duties were to take the new kids around and to give them a tour of the school. And I think there were at least 2 girls during the course of the school year that I wound up welcoming. You know, if you don't have anybody to eat lunch with, you know, you have the same lunch period as me if you want to eat at my lunch table. So even though it might be the smallest thing, if there's, you know, kind of an ambassador type role where you have a fellow student who's more open to socializing with different types of people, then maybe that could be a small solution.
And think of what an impact you made on those kids.
Absolutely.
And it's funny that you say that because administration, last week was the first week of school, and we spend that first week in the lunch periods paying attention, because I always say as a human being, nothing makes me more sad than to see a kid sitting alone at lunch, and I cannot have it, and I will not have it. But I also know that teenagers, from the moment they wake up in the morning to the moment they go to sleep at night, spend every waking moment trying not to be embarrassed.
Right.
So as the adult in the building, I don't want to walk up and say, hey, Johnny, why not, I'm going to, you know, bring you over to this nice group of kids, because that's humiliating.
Yes.
So by and large, you know, our community of students are very supportive and very receptive when they're asked to do something, as you said you did as a page. And I will walk over to a group of kids that I know and say, in 5 minutes, I'm going to walk away, but if you look around, you'll see some kids eating by themselves. It would be great if you would, walk over, introduce yourself, and invite them to sit. And I have never had a situation where kids tell me no. So by this time, 5-6 days into the school year, nobody sits alone.
Oh, that's
wonderful.
fantastic.
I think,
It's
that's
so
a
great
great...
you care that much.
I feel happy that you care
Yes,
that much.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's the social part that makes the most difference to the kids. That's what makes them get up and want to come to school. I never want to hear about the kid whose alarm goes off and dreads the thought of walking through the hallway. And that's because they don't have friends and they don't have a social group to support them.
Connection is really their biggest job at this age, and we stuff them full of biology and math and all this other stuff, but it's amazing any of it gets in, because the job of learning how to connect and attach and relate and function in a society is really the most important job that they're going to need to learn, in my humble opinion.
Yes,
and it's so cool. I'm so delighted that you have that you share that.
I like the concept that you're talking about, because it has another assumption. You know, we're talking about the kids that have troubles and whatnot, but the other side of the coin is there are some really great kids out there.
Oh, absolutely.
And we can, utilize their strengths to help us, like Pat was saying, have the kids be part of the solution. And there are some
Which
kids
obviously,
that
you did.
yeah, there are some kids that will look for the opportunity, you know, to help others.
Yeah. It's great that you planted the seed, and you must love watching those seeds grow, because I'm sure your hope is that eventually you won't have to tell kids, hey, you know, why don't you go sit with them, that they'll take it upon themselves, and it'll be pervasive, and that's what you want to take root.
Right, right.
Well, on the flip side of that, in this instance that you were just talking about, you kind of wanted to have the students interact together so that you could kind of keep the adults out of it and spare anybody from any adult embarrassment.
Right.
But let's say a student does come to you and they have some sort of pressure, whether it's trying to decide how many colleges to apply to or dealing with another student in class. How do you recommend that they handle that issue, or who should they talk to?
And we talk about that all the time. We had freshman orientation last Thursday for all the freshmen in the Fine Arts Center, and the common message that we give to all students in multiple ways, multiple times a week, would be to reach out to an adult, especially when we're talking about mental health issues or you know, from depression to anxiety. They need to advocate for themselves first and foremost. If we don't know that there's a problem, we can't help to fix the problem.
Right.
And so many times I'll hear teenagers say, well, no, I talked to my best friend and she's going to get me through this. But well, if we're talking about depression, anxiety, drug addiction, your best friend is not equipped to get you through it. We've got to go to someone who's a professional in that area. So the first thing we say is through either speaking to an adult that you trust in the building, if they're not comfortable with that, because maybe they're a freshman and they haven't made a connection yet. It's day 5 of the school. We have several different, we have a hotline that they can text message or leave a voicemail that goes right to my cell phone and our school resource officer's cell phone, so we get those messages in real time about a harassing situation. There was a text message that I received a few days back just about a kid sitting in class and not feeling comfortable and just felt like they needed a break and needed to talk to somebody. And that was a perfect avenue for that student to have an adult reach out to them and know that something was wrong.
It must be working well, or that student wouldn't have trusted that that process would work for him.
Right.
So congratulations, that's
great.
awesome.
Oh,
How long has that program been going on?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so I think that's the most important part. Let us know. Like, trust us enough and believe in us to know that we're here to help you. And I'm the person in the building that does discipline. So I delve out consequences, but at the same time, it's important for them to know that's the part of my job I like the least.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the assistant principal of student support. I am here to support you, and I'll figure out what that is with you and with your family, in whatever capacity we need that to be. We'll get the support for the kids.
It's fabulous.
Well, go ahead, Leah.
Well, I was going to say also parents need to trust their gut at home. And if they think there's something wrong with their kid, I would say 99.9% there is. And then they too should not assume that it's a phase, a stage, that the kid might grow out of it. Oh, they're smoking a little pot, it doesn't seem so serious, or Joey seems really depressed, he's going to come out of it. Sometimes they also need to reach out and get some professional help before it gets worse.
Right.
Intervention is so key.
I was going to say, what if a parent winds up talking to his or her child and they kind of blow him off and reject him? Is that a point where you have to go to the next level and find a professional who can help you deal with that situation?
Well, yes, I think you're going to want to, before you go that step, is keep trying to talk to the child. Leave it open and safe. You know, try to create some dialogue and hope you can dig deeper, investigate a little bit more, and then if you have to, seek some help for sure.
Maybe the breakfast conversation doesn't do it one day, but a couple days later that dinner one will.
Or the drive in the cars, when they're not really looking at you.
It helps if you've established sort of a connection before a crisis and just sort of sneak in a routine of, you know, taking a walk or walking the dog with the kid or whatever it is, so so that it's not so weird and awkward,
Yes.
so that when something does come up, you have sort of a medium already.
Sure.
You have that
Yes,
connection.
and it's not about lecturing or preaching either.
Right.
We really want to have communication, two-way dialogue
Yeah.
with our kids.
Right.
And like you
first.
said, too, talking about parents listening to their guts, we need to encourage our kids to listen to their guts,
Yes.
too. They're not used to learning how to listen to their guts. They're told what to do, what time to be here, what time to be there. They're preoccupied. We need to, I think, encourage them to tune in and listen to that voice, and then honor it when they speak up and say, "This is the voice I'm hearing."
Honor it. And
you
know that
within
these are
reason.
things that they go through, that, you know, depression and, you know, these are feelings that need to be, you know, looked into and not just swept under the rug.
And that it's not abnormal to feel depressed from time to time.
Exactly.
And frankly, everyone at some point in his or her life is going to think about suicide. These fleeting thoughts do happen to everyone.
Yes.
Really, statistics or whatever, really, truly, it's everyone is going to experience it at some point. It's scary, but it's real, and it's okay, and it can be dealt with, you know? Just talking about it.
Well, here's the kind of put you on the spot question. We're going to go back in a time machine here to when we were, well, I'm assuming I'm the youngest person at the table, but let's go back a little bit. And would any of you care to share a story of when you dealt with a certain type of pressure as a young person? And Jennifer, I'll start with you.
Oh, my
you can
goodness.
Pass, but you can pass, but we'll work our way around.
Wow. That's really tough for me. I have to admit, a couple of things did come to mind, and I'm not sure if this is what you're going for, but when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic high school, and we took a field trip to see a shrine, and everybody was passing a bottle of alcohol around. Somehow I know that it passed by me. I think I was just sort of in the zone, like, I don't even know if someone said, "Would you like some?" I was just, I'm
You're
not
like,
going
we're going to the shrine.
I am not going to hear, you know, I didn't want to deal with it. And so I guess I put out that vibe. I wasn't game, and it really wasn't a big issue for me. But it was there. Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's really, really tough for kids to deal with stuff like that. But they're troubled by it. They have, you know, I encountered a situation recently where kids were dealing with alcohol, and it was troubling for a few because they were upset that there might be consequences for them because they're involved with sports. And they're told right away, you know, you will not be allowed to play if you engage in this behavior. And that was what motivated those kids, among other things, to not use. But it was very upsetting for them to see these other kids use the alcohol. So you know, having those things in place. But anyway, that's what occurred to me when when you asked that
I remember back in the dark ages when I was a child, the horse and buggy routine, but not quite that bad. But I always kept this in mind. Whenever I go to a party, my dad had always warned me, never drink anything out of a open can or bottle. Someone could put something in it. And it was so weird, I never did. Like, so it really stuck in my head what my dad said, and I trusted him.
Yeah.
And I knew he was out looking for my best interest and my welfare. And so I never did. And to this day, I'm kind of like, oh, that...
I'm writing that down. That's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah.
Rob, how about you? Anything you want to share?
Well, growing up, I was, I think, like most teens, you know, not sure of myself or whatnot. I was lucky enough to get involved with sports, and you know, I kind of was able to channel a lot of my issues like that way, and I was somewhat successful. I wound up going to college, you know, on scholarship and whatnot. But yeah, I think every kid goes through some kind of time in their life when they don't know if they're good enough. And I was blessed enough, I guess, to take that challenge and I guess fight back. You know, I realized that not everybody, you know, reacts the same way. And so growing up, I was kind of like the kids you were talking about, is if there were kids that were picked on or whatever, you know, I realized that, you know, I come from a good family, you know, I've got good parents, got good brothers, good sisters, so I would look for opportunities to you know, bring some people along that maybe weren't having such a good day. Wasn't always perfect at it. I mean, I'm a flawed person too. But I think that came from my parents, just the fact that, you know, you can cry about not having any shoes until you see somebody that doesn't have any feet. And so I've always, you know, and again, I can't take credit for it. I think my parents instilled that in me. And I was able to see some things maybe that other people couldn't for whatever reason, I don't know. But I think the sports actually allowed me to channel a lot of my, you know, inadequate feelings, and gave me an opportunity. You talked about the Chinese thing, to say I am worth it, you know, and so, yeah.
Thank you. Sheriff? Oh, go ahead.
I just have a thought. What you're saying is really moving to me, because I think what you're pointing at is a value system, and we don't all share the same value about why we're here and what we're doing here. And it sounds like you were raised with a value that we're here to be of service to each other.
Yes.
And that's what made a difference in your life, and clearly in those you encountered. But others don't think about that stuff or don't feel that way, and I think that makes a difference in how we deal with these issues.
Yeah.
Good point. Sheriff Perez?
Very similar. I came from a very supportive household. Two very strict Catholic parents, 8 years of Catholic school. And, you know, there was just this consistent feeling of you never wanted to let mom and dad down. You never wanted them to be embarrassed by what you did. And as I got older, and I was also the son of a law enforcement officer, so you know,
sorry,
there was no relief. And I can remember when I got to high school age, and you know, the pitfalls that my dad dealt with every day. And he saw, in fact, he ran the juvenile division for the Aurora Police Department for 10 years, and that was right in the throes of, you know, when I was in high school. And my brothers and I would go out on a Friday night, and he'd say, hey, before you leave the house, I want you to understand something. When your good time buddies try to get you to do something tonight, you remember who you're going to come home and answer to. You're not going to answer to them, you're going to answer to me. So you think about that before you walk out the door. And, you know, God rest his soul, he's been gone almost 15 years, and I still think he could get out of that grave and put one more on me.
Oh, wow. Leah, did you want to share anything else, or was that you got your...
No, but I must admit that when I was a child, it was such a simple, beautiful place to live and to grow up in. The kids of today are struggling with so many different temptations that I never would have thought about in 100 years. So, you know, to raise a kid up strong and healthy is a wonderful feat. And you got to, you know, bless the kid and the family and the teachers and everyone involved in their lives, because it is a dangerous world we live in.
Scary.
Scary, yeah.
Yeah, they're under pressures that we were not exposed to. And even when they go beyond high school age and they go beyond college, they graduate, they've got student loans, and they've got degrees, and they can't find employment in the field that they were educated in.
So the pressures don't end here.
No.
That's for sure.
No.
Yeah. And Erin, how about you?
So I don't know if it's good or bad that I'm last, because as you're telling your stories, I'm like, oh gosh, oh my gosh. Because I went to Catholic school too, but I was not the kid that the four of you were.
That they're admitting they were.
Right. And
we're so full of it.
I don't have the ability to filter, so I just tell it like it is. And I had two parents. I had a construction worker father that worked third shift and a waitress for a mom. So I was a latchkey kid from first grade on, and just kind of, my sister and I had babysitters or we didn't, and the support was definitely there, but I think that I was the kid when I look back in high school that was pressuring all the other kids. Yeah. So I think that's why I relate so well to the kids that are on that side of the fence and on that side of the issue. in high schools today because I get it. And my girlfriends from high school are still my friends today, and we talk about those things all the time. Well, you know, you did this, and then because of you, we did this, and when I look back and I think, oh my gosh, you know, well, we could have made so many different choices, and while we're in a small Catholic school and we have family support and all those things, there were still girlfriends I had with eating disorders in the bathroom at lunch, and small Catholic school still had the drinking and the drugs and all those things, but I think they were definitely talked about less. I can't remember having a conversation with either one of my parents ever about drugs or alcohol. I don't think we ever talked about that.
We didn't either. I mean, other than the open can, don't do any of that. But he didn't really say why. You know, just it would be bad. Don't do it. That was kind of what we talked about, right? Wouldn't you say the same thing, Sheriff?
And just to set the record straight, I would not sit here and say that every decision I made at that stage of my life was a good decision.
Thanks for stepping up, Pat.
Your dad was asleep one of those nights, right?
Well,
I
will admit one night I snuck in not so quietly and got caught, and the next day my dad said, you know, well, what do you need? What do you need to make you happy? Do you need a six-pack? Do you need a 12-pack? You need a case? Tell me what you need. You know, I don't want you to go out and get a DUI or get in a wreck and hurt somebody or hurt yourself. Tell me what you need. I'll bring it home and you can stay here in the basement. Is that how you want to live your life? And I would have rather had him just tar and feather me because that made me feel this big. But it was the proper message for the time.
For sure.
It's also cool that he problem solved with you. He didn't just shame you. He talked with you. You know what's going on. I think parents often forget that they can, you know, say, what could you have done differently? What was that like? How did it feel to be in that situation? Even if it's a bad choice, because it can help a kid to think through some of that process.
And if my 19-year-old was sitting here right now, she would say to all of you, yeah, and because my mom did it all, I wasn't able to do anything, everything. Because
let's hope that cycle continues, though. It doesn't go one way and one the other way.
You know, one thing I do remember about the way I thought in high school, and that's different today, is that, you know, when I was in high school, I thought that, you know, life was going to be the same way. You know, these things in your mind that you, limitations and whatnot that you have right now, they're not going to be there when you grow up. I mean, the person that's on top right now, or may seem to be on top, is not going to be the one that's on top. You know, you may at this point you may feel that you're not worthy and whatever. Just give yourself some time. You know, this is not the way life is going to be the rest of your life. There's going to be pressures, there's going to be problems, but you know, you're not bound by the way life is right now.
There's always choices.
Very good point.
We're in a culture too where there's so much structure around people should meet these milestones at these times, and that's a lot of pressure for parents and kids. And I think people blossom at their own pace.
Yes.
There are some things that need a little support and intervention, but really people blossom and they find their way and they do find their place. And we just need to let them back off a little bit and let them, I think.
Well, it's been such a great talk so far. We're going to get some final thoughts from everybody, but since we started over here last time, we'll start with Erin. Any final thoughts on the topic of academic and social pressures?
I think that the last message I want to give to our community and to students in particular is to try the hardest you can to be involved in something. Statistics will tell us that if you're involved in something, you're less likely to have a lot of the social pressures and academic pressures, anxieties that come along with you know, being the loner. And between you don't have to be the football star, and you don't have to be the track athlete. We have over 60 clubs and activities, and so many different avenues to be involved and find that social group that's right for you. And if what you're currently involved in is not the path you want to stay on, like we just said, there's always choices.
Thank you. Leah?
Well, I would say something along that vein, that it's so important to find passion and to give back, as you were touching on before, and to find a place where you really do belong. We all want to belong and be loved. I also would stress that parents need to, again, get into the child's world and get to know who they're living with, and realize that 50% of kids do not pick up and use drugs or alcohol if they learn about these things from their parents early and often.
Yes. Thank you. Sheriff Perez.
I think it's important to anticipate that your children will make mistakes, and teach them that, you know, through those mistakes will most likely come their biggest learning curves, because they have such an impact on their lives. And you know, not everything is a victory, not everything is a win. That sometimes you have to fall down, and you have to learn how to get back up, and you have to learn how to deal with adversity. And that's part of the decision making that as parents we can convey to our children. And you know, to me, one of the best things in the world is Albert Einstein's the definition of insanity, of doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results.
Right.
For sure.
Thank you. Rob.
Just 3 things. I ask all the students to do 3 things: think, decide, and act. And that's very apropos that I use this because Sheriff Perez had talked about the Too Good for Drugs, and this idea is in the Too Good for Drugs curriculum. Think about how many kids that are killed in car wrecks every year. Think about that. How many of them got behind the wheel and thought, I'm going to die today? None of them. None of them did. So think about something before you do it. Decide, is it the right thing to do? You know in your gut if something is right. You know right from wrong. You know it. And the last thing is act. Act appropriately. Act according to what you know, what you've thought through, and what you've decided. Because the last thing that I want to do is to have to tell your parents that you're dead.
Thank you.
Rob, on that note, do you ever, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you ever, have you ever invited groups of kids to watch an autopsy be performed? Or, you know, I've heard that some folks in other communities that, you know, have done that sort of thing because it creates such an impact and really
We are looking into certain, not necessarily an autopsy, because it is pretty graphic, and there's some other, you know, issues that we don't necessarily want that.
I mean, there are privacy issues certainly.
Right, certainly. Yeah, but across the country there are some great programs that are going on. One of them is in Clark County, Nevada, and they have a tour of the coroner's facility. And I think the most impactful thing that they do at the end of this tour is they have the kids write down their next of kin.
Excellent.
And say, if you don't change what you're doing, we're going to need to call your next of kin.
Cool. Great.
Any final thoughts from you, Jennifer?
I basically, I just think that everyone is looking for meaning in their lives, and keeping that in mind as parents and kids and for each other. And remembering that you are not your mistakes, you are not your last bad grade, and there's always tomorrow. And you know, trying to remind our kids that is very important too.
Hit me with the bad grades. That was a big stickler with my parents. That's where I probably got the most pressure when I was growing up, but I think there were a lot of good points in that too. Well, thank you all. Thank you to all of our guests on this episode of Viewpoint. We hope that we have answered viewer questions about the pressures teens face. For more information, please visit www.heartsofhope.net to learn more about Hearts of Hope, and check out the Tales of the Motherhood column in our Saturday Kane County Chronicle. If you have a topic you would like to see discussed on Viewpoint, please contact us at www.mybatv.com and check out facebook.com/BATV1017. I'm Kathy Gresey. See you next time on Viewpoint.